Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about the transit North Node conjunct one's natal Chiron. When we're talking about the North Node in astrology can be about transit, can be about issues one may have to confront and address and deal with. Now, if it's something that could be unavoidable or inevitable. If you've been procrastinating on something that had to be confronted or dealt with, this is something which you may have no other choice at this time, where things are such where you may feel either whether you've had enough or whatever the reason is that it has to be dealt with. And the thing about this is, since we're talking about Chiron, could manifest in physical, emotional wounds. It might be connected with being deserted. I mean, if you have this in your fourth house, it might be being deserted by a family member or someone you feel close to home with. It could be the less dominant parent, which is often the mother. But say if it's in Scorpio in the fourth house, it might be somebody that you might see as somebody that's just very vengeful and just deserting you, maybe over something that could be a trivial issue that's in your home, your family life somehow. And the thing about this is too, it could also be about, just general suffering, emotional, physical wounds, healing, and also healing and helping others. If it's something where Chiron is the wounded healer. So Chiron could be about wounds like physical, emotional suffering one may have to endure, but it could also correspond with how we can help and heal others. Uh, this is something, like with me, an example with me, uh, and it could be about something happens where, this is about, transit North Node can also be about our future and destiny. And I'm going to give you an example of what happened. With my transit I had some years ago, involving the transit North Node making a conjunction to my natal Chiron and Aries. I'm talking when I talk about this, I'm talking about the true North Node. But if you want to apply the mean North Node, that is up to you. It's whatever is going to work for the individual. Now, on or around December 12th, 2005, my transit North Node was making a conjunction to my natal Chiron in Aries. Now, since the North Node could be about a future, I thought this was interesting. I had called out. I don't think I made the call on that day. I had quit my job inexplicably. And the thing about it is, really wasn't inexplicable at that time, because I had some extensive nerve damage, and I didn't feel I could perform the basic functions or duties of that job anymore. But anyway, that's another story. As far as elaborating on it, that could be another story for another time or video, whatever. But anyway, to get to the point on this, again, the transit North Node in Aries was conjoining my natal Chiron in Aries. It was in my 12th house of self-undoing and secret sorrows. Now, I think the way that this manifested with that experience I was describing with quitting a job I had been at for a number of years, this is something where I may have been almost destined, sadly, because of this North Node being involved, to go through some suffering due to impulsive, impetuous Aries energy. And the fact that it was in my 12th house, it was something connected with self-undoing. It could be a secret sorrow at the time, because I might not have divulged this to a number of people, or the sorrows or the feelings of despondency that I experienced I may not have really shared with many people at the time. But the thing about this is, when we're talking and you're talking about leaving the job impulsively again, it could be Aries energy, impulsive, impetuous energy, led to sorrow and really a self-inflicted figurative wound on my part. And this is also something too where, again, going back to when you have this transit of the North Node conjoining your natal Chiron, it could be issues of being deserted at the time, feeling abandoned, people leaving you, not being around for you, making you feel maybe somewhat alone and desolate. Now, the thing about this is, let's say, for example, if somebody has this transit, they have the transit North Node, say in Pisces, say it's conjunct their natal Chiron in Pisces in their 11th house. Well, this could manifest in some cases as perhaps maybe feeling deserted, maybe by rather duplicitous, deceptive, passive, weak-willed friends. It could be ones that just didn't want to be for you in a crisis or when things were getting tough in your life, because Pisces can be duplicitous, deceptive, passive, weak-willed energy. And the 11th house, of course, is associated with friends. It could be acquaintances as well. It could be maybe some group involvement you were in, and people just seem like they inexplicably dissipate into thin air. Uh, the thing about this too, when I had that transit, I mean, that it was it's interesting that it was in my 12th house of solitude and seclusion. It made me feel more alone than I had done, than I had felt previously. And Aries energy could be very abrupt. So it could have been about manifested in a lot of people abruptly, spontaneously. Aries disappearing. 12th house, I would say, could be the house of disappearances, and whether figuratively, generally. But anyway, another example is, let's say that somebody has um, they have the transit North Node in Aquarius conjoining their natal Chiron in Aquarius in their 5th house. Now, this could be about maybe it could be some future, sadly, some destiny. Might seem something that was like very preordained. It could be maybe some suffering with some very idiosyncratic, bizarre, rebellious children, or even lovers. It could be as well. You're talking about this energy as well, and looking at this, another thing too, on a positive end, talking about my example again, having Chiron and Aries in my 12th house, having the transit on another occasion for me could manifest in having maybe being very aggressive, which is Aries, being assertive and aggressive and helping those less fortunate, which is the 12th house, such as the impoverished, the oppressed, the hungry, the homeless, and also in another way could be combating, which is Aries energy, combating hidden adversaries, whether it's calling them out or what have you, because Aries can be combative. Hidden adversaries is the 12th house, and it could be people that were really impersonating as friends to me, and I'm actually finally able to confront them. Could be another example, and it could apply for those of you, of course, that have that transit. Say if you have Chiron and Aries in your 12th house in your natal chart, and you have the transit North Node conjoining it. Now remember too that the you're talking about Chiron is also in going back to healing wounds, any suffering. I mean, or just developing. I mean, North Node can be about the development of qualities and attributes, and having, when you have Chiron, and Chiron in your chart again can be about suffering we may endure, but we could help others in the same way that we're actually suffering. But I would say it doesn't mean that you can't use that energy perhaps to help yourself. If you're willing to, maybe I would say manifest the positive and embrace the positive energy of Chiron, because if you could use that energy to help others, you could certainly do it to help yourself, but it's a matter of applying that energy in order to help yourself, I would say. And let's say, for example, you have this, you have Chiron in Gemini in your 10th house in your natal chart, and the transit North Node makes a conjunction to it. Well, this could pan out and manifest perhaps in you being more developing qualities on more versatility, in one's career being more diversified, being able to multitask. It could also be manifest in the development of having street sense to improve one's social status and stature in life. Say, and a lot of this, whether it's easy energy or flowing, if it's easier to attain or accomplish or harder, can be predicated, of course, on the aspects that mix the points in your chart. Say if this makes a sextile trine to natal Jupiter, it could be more flowing, more auspicious. There may even be more prosperity in connection with it. But say if it makes an adverse aspect to your natal Saturn, there might be some more difficulty, obstructions, and roadblocks in connection with it. Another thing I want to get to, last but not least, is that remember that Chiron can be about physical wounds and suffering. So let's say, for example, if you have especially if you have this in the first or the sixth house, because the first house in your chart, it corresponds with the physical body. The sixth house can be about physical health related issues. The eighth house can play a role because the eighth house is the house of surgery. So let's say you have this transit take place. Say it's in your, say you have it in your, you have it in the first house, and you have it in Sagittarius. Well, if you have the transit north node making a conjunction to it, that can be about it could be about having to deal with, confront, or address issues of a physical nature, physical wounds, suffering in connection with the sciatic nerve. It could be the thigh, something with the liver, and even obesity in some cases. And I would say, especially in that example, if you have Sagittarius rising, because that there is a propensity toward heaviness for Sagittarius rising, and that is in having that same sign, that would give an added propensity for having that same sign on the ascendant, because the ascendant's the physical body. That would give an added propensity for what I was just explaining and describing. I mean, another example is, say if you have this in Gemini, say in your eighth house. I mean, the eighth house could be the house of surgery. It could be maybe you're directed, not directed, but there might have to be issues you have to confront or address regarding maybe surgery on an arm, a shoulder, a hand. It might be carpal tunnel. I don't know if there's surgery that's for carpal tunnel, but there can be surgery, I believe, for nerve damage. If you have nerve damage in your hands, your arms, or what have you, if they're able to detect it. Sadly, I have extensive irrevocable nerve damage, and I have not been able to have it surgically repaired because the doctors were not able to detect anything, or doctor was not able to detect anything through the nerve conduction test. Anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying, stay well.